So now I want to get into introductions and different ways that you can take the facts from for a story and reword them into an anchor introduction, things along the lines that the anchors are going to wind up reading. So one of the things that you want that can help you out is introduction cliches. You don't always want to have every story ending the same way. And a lot of times they may say, so-and-so has the story. Joan James has a story. Jordan Edson has a story. Bob Howell has the story. You want to find out more? Jeff Herring has the story. So you want to change up your introductions to kind of give your show a little variety and a little bit of spice. And there are some cliches that you can kind of use so that way you're not using the same one over and over. So in this case, all the names that you're going to hear are going to be the reporter who's doing the story. So in this case, as Joyce Simmons shows us, Trojan supporters found out exactly how much of that goal was accomplished. Andrea Sanders has the details. Gerald Smith gives us a look at the memorial held in honor of Dr. Doug Hawkins. Joan James has the story. Willie Henderson has the story of her return to Troy. John Davis explains. Terry Reed has more. Rose Tyler introduces us to the young women who will represent Troy at the next Miss Alabama pageant in June. So you're still kind of providing the same formula for anchor provides or reporter provides information, but you're changing the wording of it, which is going to give a little more flair to your show. So let's take this for a spin. This says over my shoulder that I've got a package and that it is done by Ernie Powell. He's my reporter, and the package is a minute 45. So we've got World Soccer coming up. We know a couple of facts. We're curious about which team is headed back to soccer's elite, maybe the Sweet 16 or the top-ranked players. We also know that Antoine Griezmann scores both goals to give France a 2-0 win over another world championship champion Germany and a place in the European Championship final against Portugal. So how do we take this little bit of information and turn it into an anchor introduction without giving you all the details? So I don't want my anchor to tell, or I don't want my anchor to tell the people that France had a 2-0 win. So I might change the text a little bit to see how the anchors might create an introduction and provide a little bit of a tease. So for American news, I might say, which team is headed back to soccer's elite? Well, many fans are cheering for the red, white, and blue, but it's not the team you may be thinking of, Ernie Powell explains. So here in America, our flag colors are red, white, and blue. Same colors that France has for their colors, red, white, and blue. So I threw that in there as a little twist to get people thinking about American going to soccer, but in reality, it was France. So let's give you a shot. So now it's your turn to think about this. So I want you to come up in your head of an anchor introduction for this story. The story is called Brothers Reunited. So there was Stephen Kelly and Joe Jackson were separated when they were very young, not a little bit after birth. So when they were still babies, they were separated. They grew up in separate foster homes, but they never grew up extremely far from each other. It wasn't until they came to college where they met each other on the Troy State football program. And a lot of people started telling them, well, you kind of look like each other. And they started talking, and they suddenly realized that they had a lot in common that they didn't think about. Now, they weren't identical twins, they were just brothers. But they started putting the pieces together, and they realized that they were, in fact, brothers. So take a moment and think about how you would write an anchor introduction for this. Oh, and Ernie Powell is your reporter as well. So here's what I came up with. And my answer is not the definitive right answer. Everybody has different styles that they have. So mine may be different than what you came up with, but I'm sure yours is just as good. So what I came up with was Stephen Kelly returned to Alabama from Tennessee to play football for Troy State. While it felt good to be back in his home state, little did he know that he was about to be reunited with his long-lost brother. Reporter Ernie Powell sits down with the two players to hear how they were able to find each other after a lifetime apart. Now, I was able to watch the story, and that gave me information about how Stephen Kelly came back to Alabama from Tennessee, and he probably talked a little bit about his life history. Likewise, so did his brother. So by either talking to the reporter and getting some information, or by watching the story, I could find out that little bit of information to help me out. So let's do that again. This story is called Woman Smokes Meth. And this was a story about a Florida woman who was pulled over by the city police for a broken taillight, and they were just going to write her a ticket for a broken taillight, tell her to get it fixed, and move on. Well, while she was there, she told the officer just willingly of her own accord that she sometimes smoked meth just to stay awake. And he pretty much took that as a confession for doing drugs. That gave him the ability to search her car, and he found drug paraphernalia in her car and in her possession, so she was arrested. If she hadn't said anything, then she probably just would have gotten a ticket for a broken taillight. So, again, I want you to kind of think about, what would you write as an anchor introduction to lead into the story that Ernie Powell, again, has a minute 45 package for you. So I'm going to drink some more water because I'm kind of getting dry in mouth. You got something in mind? Need a little bit longer? I think you got the gist of it. So this is what I'd come up with. And again, my answer maybe is probably going to be different than yours, but that doesn't necessarily mean that one's right and one's wrong. Again, everybody has their own way of writing and their own style of putting text. So for me, I said, one Florida woman is in a little more trouble than she bargained for when she was pulled over for a broken taillight. Ernie Powell tells us how she got herself into a lot more trouble. So again, I didn't mention anything about her confessing to the police that she did drugs or she had smoked meth to stay awake. I'm letting the reporter do that. I'm just giving you a little bit of a tease of information so that you're able to relay that to the anchors, and that way they can catch people's attention. So once you have your information, again, you're going to have parts of your script, the story title and the type. And again, that's going to be the story name, and you're going to have the story type. You have your anchor. That's going to be whoever you're assigned as an anchor and which camera they're going to be on. That's going to go, again, anchor name and camera. Insert story text here. That's going to be the introduction you're going to write. And if it's like a package or a SOT, you're going to add the length of the video over here. Not the entire story, just the video that's involved. And if there's a sig out or an out cue, you'll add that as well. Now over here in the total story time, that's where we're going to add the anchor script plus the video to tell you how long the entire story is going to be. Now, one way many stories are going to end, especially if there's video involved, it's going to be like a SOT or a package or a VOSOT. It's either going to end with either an out cue or a sig out. An out cue is a sentence or the last phrase someone says in the story. So in this case, this reporter talking to the student, this little boy, he says the last thing you hear in the package is him saying, "The puppies were my favorite." Once you hear that phrase, as a director, you know it's now time to go back to the anchor for either a tag or the next story. As this reporter is talking to this football player, she could say, or he would say, "Looking forward to the game against Auburn on Sunday." Again, that's the out cue. So that's the last thing you hear in the story. If it's a SOT or a package, when you come back to the anchor. Another example would be, "We still don't know how the pudding got on the ceiling." Strange phrase, but that's the last thing you hear in the story, and so that's what you're triggering you to go back to the anchor, if it's either for a tag or for the next story. Now, a package can have both of these. A SOT is only going to have the out cue. Now, the other thing is what's called a sig out, and a sig means signature. Out means outro. So this is where a reporter says their name. So you might hear Jenny Mo's CNN New York, or you might hear, "For Take a Look at This, I'm Jeremy Roth." Or you might hear, "For Troy Trojan Vision News, I'm Ernie Powell." So when the reporter says their name, they're kind of signing it on their package as a way to get their credit for doing that story. And that's going to be known as a SIG out. And SIG outs are only going to occur in packages. As far as a SOT or a VOSOT, that's going to end in an out queue. Now, packages can have SIG outs and out queues. They can have both. Only SOTs or VOSOTs are going to have an out queue. So that's just going to be one of the two ways that you're going to find a lot of your video, especially, you know, package SOT, I'm sorry, a VOSOT, a package, or like a page graphic SOT are going to wind up ending. So when you look at an out queue, you're going to have in quotes like OC : greatest day of my life. So the director is going to know that's the last thing that they're going to hear before coming back to the anchor for the tag. In the case of a SIG out, you're going to have SIG out Jordan Nelson. So this way the director knows the last thing that he's going to hear is the reporter saying their name, and they may say the station. So they may say, for WAFF, I'm Jordan Nelson. And so that way, by either saying SIG out or out queue, the director knows how the story is going to end, and it's going to prepare them so that they know when to come back to the anchors. So that's a look about introductions and how you kind of get from some basic concepts into